Hey everybody, it's Chris, and I've got another awesome, amazing, inspirational survivor interview. This is Kathy Bero. She was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in 2005. She had all the conventional treatments. Then she had throat cancer, and then head and neck cancer, and things just got worse and worse for her, basically. And I'm going to let her tell her story. But then what happened is she took control of her life and her situation, made radical changes, and when the doctors had basically written her off, she got well. And here she is today, alive and well, 13 years later, and just has a phenomenal healing story and has a lot of expertise on anti-cancer nutrition. And so I'm super excited. I saw her story online recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to interview you. So hey, Kathy.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Excited too.
So, where are you? What part of the country?
I'm in Delafield, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have friends in Kenosha.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So close.
Is it?
Yeah, it's only an hour.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, so let's hear your story.
Okay. So, 2005, October. I wrote my story in a book. So all the details are in there for anybody who wants to read it. So I'm just going to give a quick synopsis, but I have a horse. His name is Simon. And before I got pregnant, because I was told I couldn't be pregnant, I got him. And this one day he started pushing at my stomach. But he was kind of loving, and the instructor said, boy, your horse is being really rude. You should stop that. And I was like, I don't know, he's kind of snuggly, and I kind of like that. Turns out I was pregnant. So he knew, and then I did get pregnant again, and he knew again. So I had been sick for about 6 months, gone to every doctor you can imagine. Nobody really knew what was going on. And Simon started pushing at my breast. But he was kind of aggressive about it. He wasn't snuggly. And I thought, well, okay, that's weird. And this one day, I found this little dime-sized red spot on my right breast. And in my life before this, I did environmental advocacy work. So I was at all kinds of Superfund sites and working with people who had gotten cancer from pollution and their living situation. So my first thought was, oh, crap, I got it. I got cancer too. I've been in these places too much. And I called my sister-in-law, who was a PA at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And she said, oh, Kat. She knew right away, but she didn't tell me what I had. And she said, tomorrow morning, you're going to go to your gynecologist even if they don't have an appointment. You're going to just go sit in the waiting room until they give you an appointment. And you're going to get these tests done. And they're going to tell you you have mastitis, an infection in your milk duct. And they're going to give you a prescription for antibiotics. And you're going to say, thank you very much. Now I want a mammogram and an ultrasound. And they might fight you on it, but you're not going to leave. So it played out exactly how she said. I got my ultrasound, and they said, oh, there's something there. So they did a week later, because I was like a lot of cancer patients, I just got hit with it. It's like, oh man, and now I don't want a biopsy right now. I need to process. So I left and then came back a week later. They did the biopsy, and it was a infiltrating ductal carcinoma. It was 1.5 inches in size. And so, woohoo, that's got a great recovery rate. And so I called my sister-in-law, and she said, no. You go get a breast MRI now. You have inflammatory breast cancer. And at the time, Sloan Kettering was seeing all of the patients, or the majority of patients with it, who were misdiagnosed. And so I told my surgeon, I need a breast punch biopsy and a breast MRI. And he said, you don't have inflammatory breast cancer, but if it makes you feel better, I'll do it. So he did it. Sure enough, he called me up and he said, I'm so sorry. You have inflammatory breast cancer. It was approaching 5 centimeters in size. It was in my skin. we're starting, that was on a Friday, and we started, that was on Friday. I saw the oncologist that afternoon, and on Monday they put my port in, and on Tuesday I started chemo.
That's fast.
It was insane.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't have time to think, did you?
No. Oh, no. And you just kind of go with the flow, like, okay. And it was a very low survival rate cancer. So it's like, I don't want to mess with this.
Did they tell you that?
Yes. And so I'm sitting in the chemotherapy room, and I'm generally like, light, and I like to laugh and make jokes. And my second appointment with my oncologist, I said, this was right after I started chemo. So my second appointment with him for my next infusion, my husband and I had always made black walnut tincture, because we had all these black walnut trees in our backyard, because it's anti-inflammatory, antifungal, it's antibacterial.
Yeah, anti-parasitic too, right?
Awesome. Yeah. So we would make it every year, and then we'd put it in our water, and our water would be yellow, right? So he had a clear water bottle with him at this appointment. So before the doctor came in, I put it on the desk. So he had to pick it up to put his computer down. So he picks it up, and he's like, "Wait." And I said, "Oh, okay. So is this why I have cancer? That's what my water looks like." And he was like, for this split second, "Oh." And then he started laughing. He's like, "Oh, that's how it's going to be?" And I said, "Yeah, that's how it's going to be. So we're going to move through this in a happy way, because that's the only way I can do it."
I thought you were going to say, "I brought you a sample of my urine. I thought you'd like to check it out."
No. But so anyway, he was really good with me. And he was really good about, he'd joke about me being proactive. Because I would bring him studies or information. I would say, "Can you please look this up and tell me about it?" Because I couldn't really focus on that chemo. It was dose dense and not good. And then I added Avastin, which is an anti-angiogenic chemotherapy, and the tumor was shrinking. It was responding. So during that time, I was learning meditation. I was learning how to visualize my body healthy and strong. Those were the two things I was kind of relying on. And then I was starting to learn about anti-angiogenic food and how to use food as medicine. And I wouldn't say I was all in immediately. It took some time to kind of commit and learn. And I got 2 books, the anti-cancer book by David Servan-Schreiber. And
a good one.
Yep, and Cancer Fighting Foods by Richard Beliveau up in Canada. And I could read those cover to cover for some reason, and it was like my Bible. So I kept it on the counter when I went shopping. I got those foods. And then then I finished chemotherapy. I had a lot of surgery because I had complications from the surgery. Then I had radiation, and it was non-skin sparing radiation. So they took my skin off, because inflammatory breast cancer travels through your body through the skin and the dermal lymphatics. And then I was just recovering, like my skin was just starting to grow. And I woke up one morning and I had no balance. And honestly, divine intervention, because my husband was out of town. It was his first work trip since I had gotten sick. And I was like, yeah, you're good. You can go. I got this, That next morning I woke up and I couldn't walk up straight, and I had to take the girls to, daycare and school. And I just kind of used the wall to navigate, got my older daughter up, who at that time was 8, and my other daughter was 3. And I said, "Emma Grace, you need to get Hannah ready." And that's kind of, and I said, I remember saying, "I'm going to try to get breakfast." And that's kind of the last thing I remember before I was in an MRI machine. Somehow I got them, so I know I was guided. Got them to where they needed to go. I got my MRI. Sure enough, I had another tumor back in my head and neck. And that was treated at UW-Madison. And I had surgery there, radiation.
And they told you that was a different cancer, wasn't related to the breast cancer.
Correct. And when I asked my radiation oncologist was the head of the oncology program at the Carbone Cancer Center there. And I said, have you ever had someone with these two cancers? He said, you're my third. So obviously there's a connection, but they're just not researching it because both cancers are rare. So this study on Avastin, for example, this is a remarkable thing that my doctor did, but I went to him with a study from the NIH on Avastin and inflammatory breast cancer. They only had 31 patients because this is such a rare cancer. But it showed an extension of life by 6 months. And so I said, I want you to get this drug for me. And he called the NIH, he called the researchers, and he somehow managed to get my insurance company to cover it. It was like, I can't remember, it was $10,000 or $15,000 a dose. So that was incredible. And so I got to the end of the radiation, but of course the side effects from all the meds, taking out my heart and my lungs and my thyroid and my kidney and liver, they were starting to fail. I had fatty liver disease and, all these, and I was always super healthy before this. So it was really through meditation, and I had started doing Reiki after my second diagnosis, that between those two things, I kept just getting this, like, get off the protocol train, just get out of it. And I went to Commonweal. If any of your viewers don't know Commonweal, it's a wonderful cancer retreat center out in Bolinas, California. And it's all natural. The food is amazing. There were 8 of us and 11 staff people for 8 days. And we did psychotherapy work and yoga and meditation. And it was just sand trays. It was far and away the best experience I've ever had in this last, 13 years. But it was there that I woke up on the 5th morning and it was like, oh, I know what I have to do. And I know I have to teach other people too. And so I went home, and that's when I said, I'm done. I'm done.
And what was your status at that point? Cancer status?
I was in remission. So, that was, for me, I kind of knew I didn't have cancer at that point. You learn to listen to your inner voice, and I knew I didn't have it, but it was only, it was about 3 years post-diagnosis, and recurrence rates are high, and they generally don't call you cancer-free with inflammatory breast cancer for a decade. Like, you have to go through all this continued treatment for a decade, and then they'll call you clean. Well, I know that the majority of cancer stem cells, and I learned this during that time, are resistant to chemotherapy and all those drugs. So no matter what they were doing, it wasn't likely to get them. And I knew that using food as medicine, because the way it works is it breaks off the blood supply to the cancer cell. So when we're eating specific foods that are anti-angiogenic and anti-inflammatory, we're killing the cancer cells because we're starving them, basically. And so to me, that made perfect sense. Like, they're not resistant to food, so...
Well, let me explain for anybody that doesn't know this concept. Angiogenesis is the process by which tumors form new blood vessels in order to grow larger. And a tumor can't grow larger than about the size of the head of a pin, like a head of a pencil, very small, without forming new blood vessels. And that process is called angiogenesis. And there are compounds in food that are known as anti-angiogenic that block the formation of new tumor blood vessels. But they don't harm your healthy blood vessels or your healthy cells, but they block cancers from forming new blood vessels. So that's really important. And, I discovered this too, but Kathy discovered this research that, wait a second, there are foods that do what this drug Avastin also is purported to do, although Avastin doesn't work that well because it's a little bit too targeted and you're missing all the wonderful nutrients, the additional nutrients and the synergistic compounds that you get from food. And Avastin has some pretty rough side effects as well.
Yes. Well, and it's important to understand that there's over 70 different diseases, chronic diseases, that are dependent on angiogenesis. So when we let our bodies get unhealthy, when our microbiome in our gut gets unhealthy, too heavy on the bad bacteria and not enough on the good bacteria, or we get stressed out, or we're in a constant state of stress, or we haven't released emotional hurts or things in the past. Inflammation stays in our body, even though we stuff all that stuff down and think it's gone or it was a long time ago. Man, it comes up, and your body is not equipped to handle. Some of us can overcome it, but obviously with the rise of cancer diagnosis and other chronic diseases, most of us, 60% of us, can't handle it. And so if angiogenesis has gone awry in your body, because it really should only happen when you have a wound to heal, or if you're a woman when you're pregnant or menstruating, and that's basically it. So if it's happening outside of that, your body's out of balance, there's disease starting to grow. So using food as medicine was awesome, because I love to eat, and and I love cooking. I had to kind of learn a new way, because
We'll talk about those foods specifically that you started eating a lot of.
Yeah, so I created a list by talking to a number of different food scientists who had been doing a lot with food and cancer, and I posted my list on my website. It's also in the back of my book, which you can get on Amazon or through your local bookstore, which would be even better than through Amazon. Support our local bookstores. But
what's your website?
Sorry?
What's your website?
Oh, it's really easy. KathyMydlachBero.com. So yeah.
KathyMydlachach.
Yep.
Bero.com.
Yeah.
And we'll put links in the show notes, everybody. So if it's fine, just check the show notes. I'll have links to her book and her website and everything.
And it's
there. It is.
So anyway, so it was really, at first it was kind of tricky, because I had little kids, and my husband's a huge meat eater, and we're in Wisconsin and not known specifically for a healthy diet here. So we ended up planting a garden of some of the highest, the strongest foods for fighting disease, like garlic and leeks, and onions, and Brussels sprouts, and broccoli is not my favorite, but kohlrabi, and then doing all the dark leafy greens, and kale, Swiss chard, beets with beet greens. And kale is one that I learned something really important about for all your viewers. You really can't have kale more than 3 to 4 times a week, because it can cause kidney stones. And so part of my kidney problems were because I was having kale every day.
Too much kale.
So that's weird. Kale and spinach. But so anyway, we took the list of foods and we planted it. And we took over my horse's outdoor arena and planted it with garden, and we planted raspberries and blueberries and elderberries, and it was my cancer fighting garden. And my kids loved to pick the food and eat it right off the vine. It was just they didn't love weeding with us, but we were all out there, taking care of the garden. And we grew.
Gotta be done. It's gotta do it.
Right. We ended up growing about 80% of our food for a number of years. I can't remember how many years now, 5 or 6 years. But we had chickens, and they gave us eggs, and so it was kind of exciting, actually, time, but a lot of work. And I used the garden, like I started teaching my kids how to eat. So, for example, they didn't want kale. A lot of kids, because I don't know what it is, but they're taught that greens are bad or something. I don't know, but
kids have an aversion to anything green.
Yeah, it's so weird. But my husband's family is like Packer Legacy football team, the Green Bay.
Yeah,
Packers.
Green Bay. Yep.
His great uncle was on the first team, Tubby Bero.
Wow.
And his grandfather was like one of their first fundraisers, collecting money to help buy uniforms and helmets and things. So Packers are big in our family. So I said, okay, you guys like corn. I'm going to make Packer corn. And so I chopped up a bunch of kale, mixed it with the corn, green and gold.
Smart.
And they were like, okay, sure, we'll eat that.
Yeah,
and so it was
great.
really just, getting creative with cooking. And I never follow recipes. It's just kind of like, I call it intuitive cooking, creative cooking, like you're tapping into your inner voice to tell you what my body needs today. And so I developed these recipes. And then after seeing too many friends dying, they'd come to me and they'd say, tell me what you're doing. And I would tell them, and they'd go to their doctor and they would say, I want to do what she's doing. And they would say, no. She's a fluke. That's just crazy talk.
She's just lucky.
Yeah, don't, we're going to stick to the plan here. And then they would die. And so I lost 6 friends. And then the capper for me was my dad was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And his oncologist was my oncologist. And so I cleaned out their kitchen. I put all new foods in, reminded my mom how she used to cook, and would call my dad, midday, and I'd say, hey, Dad, what'd you have for lunch? And he'd say, oh, Taco Bell. And I'd be like, oh, my God, just stick the knife in. And, I mean, you're killing me, Dad. The cancer didn't get me, but you're going to kill me. So I started going to his appointments, and I said to my oncologist, are you kidding? Would you please tell him? And he said, I don't have any data. I can't tell him.
I don't have any data that Taco Bell is unhealthy.
Except here's your daughter who's alive and well. Like, it was crazy to me. And, of course, we lost my dad and had his doctor told him what to do. But
Can I interject something here? Because this is such an important thing. Two important things. One is some people are very hard to help.
Correct.
Right? And usually the people that you want to help the most are the people you can't help because they don't want it.
That's right.
And that's hard. It's a hard lesson that I had to learn, and I imagine you've learned it as well. And the second thing is, it's so frustrating when someone, it borders on malpractice when a person gets interested and inspired and enthusiastic about nutrition, about changing their life, about taking control of their situation, helping themselves, and then they go to the doctor and the doctor says, no, don't do it, it won't help, and just completely quenches that fire. I mean, that is just, like I said, it's negligent, borderline malpractice.
Well, and here's the thing about it. Our medical community takes an oath. Do no harm.
Yes.
Every time they prescribe a drug, you're doing harm by definition. Okay, you do surgery, you're doing harm. But in particular, those drugs, because you take one, now you've got side effects.
Right.
So they're giving you new ones to manage those side effects, but you've got new ones. So now you have new side effects.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's just not okay. And my girlfriend, who passed of triple-negative breast cancer, said to me, because I was very upset, of course, when my dad wouldn't listen. And I'm like, Dad, I'm standing right in front of you. This worked. And she said, hey, this cancer's not your cancer. You don't get to have his path. You had your path. And that's really an important lesson that I talk to all of my clients about, is that it's really important for us to respect each cancer patient's path. And I don't really call cancer a journey because I think life is a journey and cancer is just part of the path. For me, it was a silver lining. It was a gift because I learned things and grew in ways I never imagined I would have. But one of my clients that I saw yesterday, she doesn't want to eat because it tastes sour. And she's losing weight and, not doing well at all.
Yeah.
And I say, so what's the worst thing that could happen if you ate something that tasted sour? Well, I might get acid reflux. I'm like,
right.
Yeah. So So people are going to make their own choices, but I think the more of us telling our stories, and the more of us, so the most egregious thing that was ever said to me was, I went to the CEO of my hospital and I said, they had invited me to speak at their leadership conference, which was like 500 people. And I wasn't really speaking well at the time. Because of the chemotherapy, I was having a hard time putting words together. That stuff takes a huge toll. And they said, we want you to tell us what we did wrong and what we did right. And I was like, really? Because will say what you did wrong.
You sure?
Which
you want me to tell you that?
Yeah. Right. And I mean, I have, I don't know. I don't ascribe to the whole, because you're this kind of, you're in that career that I somehow should have reverence, that I don't ascribe to that. It's, hey, we're both people.
Right.
So anyway, I got a standing ovation and the CEO said, hey, come and talk to me. What do you want to do? So I said, I want to start teaching people about food as medicine. And he said, great, let's start a nonprofit organization, because he was retiring. And I was like, nah, not another nonprofit. I don't want to do that. But that is ultimately what we did. But we had to have this leadership meeting. And his medical director for the hospital said to me, this medical director specializes in diabetes. And he said to me, I'm very uncomfortable with this. We don't know what food will do.
We know what it won't do. Won't make your hair fall out.
Oh,
it won't do that.
It was just like, I looked at him and I said, really? Like, are you kidding me? You guys had no problem throwing drug after drug after drug after drug at me. You had no idea how those would work. But you're worried about somebody eating food?
Right. You're worried about a carrot? Really?
Right. So that was I think the moment for me where it was just set in stone that this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how many people are entrenched, in the medical community, and like American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, like these associations, American Cancer Society, and they're so entrenched, and their paychecks are really dependent on maintaining the status quo. So they don't want to rock the boat, right? They don't want to do anything to upset the apple cart. They just want to keep their cushy job, keep getting their little paycheck, right? Keep organizing the fundraisers, keep the money flowing in, and really not make a difference in anyone's life. And so it's sad, but that is the reality that the public doesn't understand about many of these charitable organizations that put up a front as if they want to cure a disease, and they really just want to, just exist and everybody keep getting a paycheck.
Well, it's the same thing with diabetes, right? I have a nephew who's type 1 diabetic, and it is not in their best interest to come up with a cure. It's just not. And the cost of medication for him is absolutely insane just to keep him alive. It's just not right. So anyway.
And by the way, there's an incredible resource online for anybody that is type 1 or knows somebody with type 1 called Mastering Diabetes.
Great.
And Mastering Diabetes, it's about managing and reversing, healing type 1 and type 2 diabetes with nutrition. And the two guys that run it both are type 1, and just amazing guys. So Mastering Diabetes. I think it's .org. It might be .com, but if you Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah, his mom is very research-oriented, so I will send her there. That's great for that. Yeah, so anyway, I did this nonprofit for a while, and I realized I was getting really tired. I was really worn out because I was talking to people all the time. I was fundraising. I was basically CEO, fundraising director, volunteer coordinator, like everything, but I was volunteering all my time for this organization, and we were raising money, but I didn't feel comfortable taking money. Just didn't really. I felt like that would kind of take the fun out of it if it turned into a job for me. So anyway, but I wasn't able to help as many people as I felt like I wanted to. And the weird thing was from, like, my Reiki master used to say to me early on, oh, you're going to write a book. You're going to help a lot of people. And I was like, I'm not going to write a book. I don't have the energy for writing a book. I can't even get words out of my mouth. And then after my dad passed, my mom and I and my two sisters went to a spa. We took my mom to a spa right after Thanksgiving just to let her relax. And the massage therapist that was working on me, she said, "Oh, hey, how's that book going?" I was like, "I'm not writing a book." That was in 2010. And she's like, "Oh, well, you will be writing a book." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." That happened 2 more times. I was in Jackson Hole, and it was another massage therapist there who was intuitive, and she said, "Oh, yeah, your book is going to be awesome. I can't wait to read it." And I was like, "I'm not writing a book." By 2013, I sort of said, I think I woke up one day and it was like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll start doing this. But it was an interesting process because I have 18 journals during that 10 years. And so I used those, and I was sitting in my office writing about myself, day in and day out, and thinking, this is ridiculous. Like, who's going to want to read this? And I gave it to my friends, and I said, I just don't think I can write this. And they said, you don't get it. This is not about you. You're making this about you. This is not about you. Which I love my friends. And it was true. This book is not about me. It's about it's my story, but it's whatever you take from my story. So, did I only do unconventional, like you did, or Glenn Sabin, or, many others that people don't know? No. It was a hard-won fight to get to this place for me, to understand, but it doesn't have to be hard-won for everyone. So your work, for example, and all the people that you talk to and everybody else who's out there talking about, the more we talk about this, the quicker we're going to get change.
Yeah.
And I love that we're all kind of working together. It just makes me feel like something so much bigger than myself. And
it is so much bigger. I mean, yeah, things are changing. They really are. I mean, we're on the same mission, which is to spread the message that nutrition is powerful, that food, can either promote disease or health in the body. And your choices matter. What's on the end of your fork matters.
Well, and I want to give you a little, an example of my daughter, she's 19. And she's, I guess they don't call it Asperger's anymore, but she's on the autism spectrum. And her freshman year in college was extremely difficult. And she's high anxiety, like 20-some% of kids today. But she had a very tough time, came home. She had been misdiagnosed. She had, tonsillitis, but really extreme. They kept diagnosing her with a sinus infection or whatever, giving her antibiotics when she was at school. And I wasn't there to kind of like, don't do that.
Yeah.
By the time she came home, she was very sick. And my girlfriend, who's an ENT doctor, she removed her tonsils and her adenoids and said it's like insanely infected in there. This kid needs recovery. So all during the summer, we worked on building her microbiome and getting, her diet back on track. And we sent her to Outward Bound for a month out in the Rockies.
Wow.
And in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you're not taking any meds with you. You're just gonna let nature do its thing. When I saw her, because we had no communication with her till she got back. So when she was coming down the tarmac towards me, having just gotten off the plane, she's like skipping. She's like, "Mom," the first thing she said, "My microbiome rocks. I feel awesome." She said, "We ate so much dirt."
I bet.
So, and her depression was gone.
Yeah.
And she was clinically depressed. They wanted to treat her. And I said, no. And they almost treat you like you're negligent, right? A negligent parent. She hasn't had no problem with depression. Her anxiety has really dropped. It just, when I saw that very stark contrast, by just curing your intestinal function, your microbiome, it's easy and anyone can do it,
Yeah. Well, what's amazing too is it's something I hadn't thought of, but being at Outward Bound for a month. I mean, you're in nature, right, for about a month. I mean, so you're the healing power of nature is in effect when you spend that much time in the woods or hiking, like wherever they were, fresh air, sunshine, all the what they called phytoncides that plants release, right? Which is why birch trees smell like birch. Like when you inhale that stuff, it actually affects your body. Right. Boosts your immune function, actually, which is fascinating. That you've probably heard of forest bathing, right?
I was just going to say, it's forest bathing.
Yeah, spending time in the woods improves your immune function. It's so crazy, and it's not some hippie theory. I mean, it's just clinically documented stuff. Right. So that's so cool. I might have to add that to my my recommendations for people. Like maybe just go to Outward Bound for a month while you're at it.
Right. It was really. Just so amazing. And we were wilderness people anyway. We used to be in the Boundary Waters all the time, or build snow cave, dig out a snow cave in the Rockies because we got caught in a blizzard, and whatever. But so they were kind of used to being out in nature, but not quite like that, And so anyway, and she did get a few parasites, but we got rid of those.
Comes with the territory. Yeah.
Right. It's okay. Not the end of the world. But I mean, I just, as we're talking, I'm thinking, so this is, my youngest daughter's 14, makes tea, a pitcher of tea every day. And this is her tea. And then we also make kombucha. And so I mix my tea with my kombucha. And so I'm building my microbiome every day. We make our own sauerkraut. These things are super easy to do. Yeah. And super effective ways to get the good bacteria working in your body. So, yeah.
Talk more about your anti-cancer diet, just kind of some of the specifics of it, and anything else that you did during that time where you were in your most intensive healing phase of, of your life.
So, I'll talk about the food after this, but Reiki was a huge one for me. And I'm now a Reiki master, newly certified, so I'm super excited about that. But when I was starting it, I did not know what it was. And my girlfriend brought this Reiki master to me because she was afraid I was going to die. So she's like, you have to work on her. She can't die. And I was getting radiation to my head. And I had my eyes closed, and it felt like, when you're a kid and you put the suction from the vacuum cleaner on your arm or your cheek,
I still do that.
Yeah, right. I know. It's fun. Friday night. But so that's what it felt like. It felt like my head was just being sucked into this thing. And I was actually terrified to open my eyes. And, it's like the girl in a horror movie, that just stares at the monster coming at her, I just laid there on the table with my eyes closed instead of going, what's going on? But turns out he was sucking the radiation out of my head. And I write about this a little bit in my book, but so I was getting radiation every day, and he would, I'd get it every day, and on a Tuesday I'd go see him, and he'd suck it out. And I wasn't getting all the side effects everyone else was, and my radiation oncologist, he said, I don't understand. What's going on? Because, what are you doing? Because you're not getting all the side effects. And I said, I'm doing this Reiki stuff. I don't know. And he goes, oh my gosh, what day do you do it? And I said, Tuesday. And he said, I noticed. On Monday, you're dragging. On Tuesday, you're dragging. And then on Wednesday, you're skipping down the halls. And he said, would you please come and talk to a group? So he put this group of other doctors and nurses and patients together. And my Reiki master and I talked to them, told them. And afterwards, and the patients looked very, very ill. And I said, so where are they in their treatment? And he said, oh, you're the only one in treatment. They're all a year or two out. He said, now you know why I wanted you to talk. Because he's like, you don't look sick. And so then I realized, okay, Reiki works. So I started kind of digging my heels in with it. And that was a huge I would say, game changer for me, because that really helped release a lot of my old junk, emotional stuff. And, you just release,
I had several Reiki sessions in 2004.
Yeah.
And was recommended to it by, and Reiki, for people that don't know what it is, I mean, it's kind of like healing hands. That's the easiest way to explain it. I'm sure you can explain it better, but it's a healing therapy. And I was like, yeah, whatever, like I'll do anything.
Right.
And so I did have some Reiki sessions, and I didn't have a profound, it wasn't like you where I had a profound, like, oh wow, like I can tell something's happening. But at that point in my life, I was just open to doing anything I could to help my body heal.
Yeah, and the funny thing is there are so many modalities out there, and you have to choose what works for you. So, for example, I tried acupuncture; it didn't work for me.
I
didn't
too.
like it. But I had a girlfriend who swore by it, but she didn't do it. So it's just, I think it's really important for people to find what resonates for them, because that's what your body's asking for. It's learning to trust that inner voice. And my sister-in-law said something to me, the one that she was a PA at Sloan Kettering. And when I asked her about Reiki and this food is medicine thing, I'm like, what do you think about this? And she said, really? You want to get to the end and say I should have? She said, do it all. Just do everything.
Yeah.
You got nothing to lose. None of it's going to hurt you. And so that's really what when I'm talking to people today, it's, because there are a lot of people who think Reiki is somehow like crazy.
Witchcraft or something?
Whatever. And, it's a gift. And if you're if you're Christian and you look back in the Bible, there's a whole thing about laying on the hands, and Jesus saying, and I think it's St. Paul saying, you can do this and more to the audience. Like, we're supposed to be doing this. We're supposed to be sharing our good energy with each other, and helping each other. And so anyway, I did Reiki, and I was doing the meditation, I was doing the visualization work, and then I just dug in with the food. And so I don't like to call it a diet because I am not good at diets. And so, if somebody says, hey, you should try the Mediterranean diet, or you should try the, paleo diet, or you should try the whatever diet.
Don't try that one.
Not happy. Yeah, I know. And I'm just like, that's not for me because I'm not built that way. So what I needed to do and what I did was just give me a list of foods that I can choose from every day. And I need to make sure they're all high value foods.
It's mostly vegetables, a little bit of fruit probably on the list.
Right. Go pollen. Eat food, mostly vegetables.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Right. Which fruit did you eat? Pomegranates? Did you eat those a lot?
So here's an interesting thing about pomegranates. Well, my daughter loves them. But one of the scientists, Jack Loso, down at Louisiana State University, said to me when he was helping me with this list, he said, why would you get pomegranates when cranberries are much more powerful at fighting cancer? And they grow in your state.
Cranberries are awesome.
Yeah. So it's really, trying to find local foods because we all have them in our communities. We don't have to, go exotic unless you really enjoy those. But so it was, black raspberries are huge cancer fighters. And we had them all over our farm. Where I live now, we have them all along, the side yard. And there's a ton of research now with black raspberries, and they're actually using black raspberry powder from Berry Health, which is a company out in Washington, and in 15 different oncology clinics because they're fighting cancer. So there's
nice.
a link on my website to them, and the people who run Berry Health, it's a family deal, and they are great. And they will give a discount, loyalty discount, medical discount, to people who want to use it. So if people want to go there, they should definitely ask for that. But we would pick our black raspberries and freeze them. We had strawberries, we had blueberries, we had elderberries, we had regular raspberries. So those were always on the plate. Then we had, lots of tomatoes. And for your viewers who don't know, raw tomatoes aren't awesome for you. Like, you're not going to get the full benefit. You need to cook them a little bit. And that's really true of a lot of foods that, there's the raw food diet, you should eat everything raw, but that you're not actually getting the nutritional benefit for a lot of foods if you eat them raw. So it's
it varies.
Yeah, it varies. So you want to be sure that you understand, because certain foods you do get, you're fine when they're raw, but you have to kind of understand that. And
it takes a little research, but for broccoli and broccoli sprouts, for example, are better eaten raw because then you preserve sulforaphane and indole-3-carbinol, which are the big anti-cancer compounds in those foods. But tomatoes, when you cook them, it boosts the lycopene by like 8 times as far as absorption, or more.
And sprouts in general are going to be more potent than the actual food.
Yeah.
So, and broccoli stems are better than broccoli florets.
Yeah.
It's so fun. So there is happily a lot more science now, but back then it was a lot of faith. There was a little bit of science. There wasn't one place where it all was. It was all over the world. And so we did, generally we had our eggs from our chickens. And this is another thing I like people to understand, is that it is critical that your chicken eggs, your chicken, your pork, your beef, whatever you're eating, is grass-fed, pasture-raised, because that's when it's high in omega-3 fatty acids, which is anti-inflammatory. But the way we started growing our food after World War II was to put everything on these feedlots, feed them food they shouldn't be eating, grain, corn, whatever, feed our chickens grain. Chickens are supposed to be eating bugs and grass, they're not supposed to be eating corn and grain. And when we did that, we boosted, so I was looking at one of your videos and you were talking about processed food, right? And when we did that, we created a very high level of omega-6 fatty acid, which is an inflammation-producing fatty acid in our body, which causes disease. And we do want some omega-6 in our body because it is healthy, a little bit, but our proportions are totally off.
Because the ratios are way off.
Way off. And so we're eating all these foods that are processed, that are raised in ways they weren't supposed to be raised.
Well, not to mention factory farmed animals. The feed that they're given is full of toxic crap, and they absorb that stuff into their bodies, into their fatty tissue. And so, factory farmed animals are carrying a lot of environmental pollutants in their tissue and in their meat.
It makes me so sad. We went out to Colorado and drove past these Angus beef, farms. Mm-hmm. They're all smashed into these little paddocks, and the paddocks are muck, and their food is like spread around in the muck, which is really poo, and it stinks for miles. And I'm thinking, how do you look at that and say, I want black Angus steak?
Yeah, it's gross.
It's just, it's gross. So
anyway, they're eating their own poop, basically.
Right, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
So anyway, so for us, we were eating. Now my husband does like meat, so we raised a cow. And if anybody's read Barbara Kingsolver's books, she's now I'm going to forget the title. They spent a year sustainable eating, raising all their own food, and I can't remember what it's called.
I don't know the book.
Animal Vegetable Miracle, and it's a great book. And she talks about their cow had a good cow life, like they treated it well, they took care of it. And I was a vegan for a long time, so I get the psychology of all that. But my husband was a meat eater. We grew a cow, and but he was raised. He had a good cow life. He was raised in the pasture. The kids were out with him. Our horses were with him, and then we had chickens and turkeys and guinea hens, and everything was pasture raised, grass fed, and it was healthy. And so that's how we ate every day. I didn't eat a ton of meat at the time. I mostly just ate chicken and turkey and chicken eggs, but I didn't even have that every day. So today we get fish from a co-op in Sitka, Alaska, called Sitka Salmon Shares. We get awesome fresh fish right out of like the waters in Alaska, the inlets, and it's amazing fish. And it's like they freeze it the second they take it out. So when you get it, it's so fresh. So we have fish a lot now, and we have farmers that we buy all of our food from. So we have a farmer that grows chickens, and we buy our chickens and chicken eggs from him. And then we have farmers we buy our produce from, although we're still growing some of our own produce. We have garden boxes in the backyard, and grow our leafy greens and our beets and our onions and tomatoes and kohlrabi and peas and beans and, just the stuff that we can. So basically it's just try to eat. While I was healing, my goal was to eat at least 10 servings of something off my list every day. And I know people say, because I coach a lot of people, and they'll say that's just too much food. Well, a serving is literally a half a cup.
Right.
It's not too much food.
It sounds like a lot, but it's not. And 10 servings is now sort of the new standard in terms of fruits and vegetables for the optimal amount for disease prevention. They used to say 5 a day, right? And now they know, and they're saying, well, we are now confident that 10 servings of fruits and vegetables per day is the optimal amount for disease prevention, which doesn't leave much room for meat and dairy. It's 10 servings is pretty much breakfast, lunch, and dinner, fruits and vegetables.
And it's just not hard to do, and it's good. No. And if you if you value your health, it's truly a trade-off. If you're going to continue to eat processed, crappy food, you are what you eat. It's going to catch up with you. And so, is there a guarantee that if you eat this way, you're never going to get cancer? No. But the misconception is that cancer is genetic, and there's only 5% of cancers that are genetic.
Right.
The rest of the cancers are preventable. So if
diet and lifestyle and environment, the environmental ones that's as you know, preventable sort of. Yeah, unless you're unlucky enough to live next to EPA Superfund site.
Yeah, right. And we need to be thinking about what are we allowing our corporations to do to us? Because way back when, in the 80s, when I was working in this field, I would talk about, it's my constitutional right to breathe clean air and drink clean water and eat clean food. When did that get turned around? That it's a constitutional right to pollute everything.
Right.
And with the wave of organic, more people are aware that organic is better. And I think we need to be looking at that in all aspects of our life. Get the chemicals out. Don't allow our businesses, our corporations to poison us and then reap the profits while we go broke paying the medical expenses. It makes no sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense. What's crazy is I found out years later, I just found this out, is that one block from the house where I lived for 10 years was a dry cleaner that had been polluting, I don't know what they were doing, but dry cleaning chemicals had seeped down into the soil, and so now they're having investigations about it and all this kind of stuff, and it was a block from my house, and I think it might have infiltrated the drinking water. It's give me a break.
Right. It's beyond. The pendulum swung too far, and in the name of jobs is just a sham. Back in the 90s here in Milwaukee, I worked with the Milwaukee Sewage District, which is the big, and I said, we need to get toxins out of this water. We need to teach our businesses about pollution prevention. And so I founded an organization. It's got a crazy name. They've changed the name since then, but it was the Milwaukee Metropolitan, what was it? Oh gosh, now I'm going to forget. It was very long. Pollution Prevention Task Force is how it ended. And what was fascinating to me is these businesses came to the table kind of what's this? But they left saying, they left creating pollution prevention plans that allowed them to be more economically viable. They had higher profits. Now they didn't have the waste, products. And they all said after it was 3 years or 5 years, they all said, we are doing better now than we were when we were polluting. Put closed loop systems in. So it's possible, and I always hate it when I hear companies say, well, we're going to lose jobs if you ratchet down on our pollution. Well, we're going to lose lives if you don't. So, we're, as a community, as a culture, we have to decide what's more important. And we have to understand that it isn't an either or. We will still have jobs, but we got to clean things up. And when I look at, I call this the true healthcare reform. Because I was kind of devising this while, Congress and Senate were trying to reform healthcare, which was silly. Mm-hmm. True healthcare reform is you prevent disease. And you prevent disease by making sure everyone's got clean water, clean air, clean soil, clean food, and they're healthy. So now they're actually going to work, they're going to school, they're spending their money in the community, they're not going broke because they can't afford medical expenses. And so you end up with this very healthy community, economically, physically healthy, people are going to be happy. So, to me, that's like the utopian healthcare, reform.
Yeah.
And anything short of that is never going to really work. So anyway, that's a whole topic.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's a big mission, but I agree. I mean, it's been frustrating from my vantage point to watch so many politicians and even activists get all worked up about CO2 and carbon dioxide emissions, which I think are the least concerning of the pollutants that are coming out of, that are being produced by industry right now, right? But the problem is, it was a money-making opportunity to sell fluorescent light bulbs and things like that versus getting us to actually change our diet and stop polluting the soil and stop polluting the air and things like that. But anyway, we just keep talking about it. Eventually, we get through to the right people and things will change.
It's education. This organization that I founded, I used a lot of the principles that I developed at home with my kids there. And I loved, and we worked with, from kids to older people to learning disabled, doing job training. They did landscaping work and working in the kitchen and whatever. But the kids, what we did was I developed a pizza garden, and because everybody loves pizza, right? So this will be a friendly way to get healthy. So the kids were allowed to go in the pizza garden, pick whatever they wanted, but whatever they picked, they had to put on their pizza. So they had to be thoughtful about it. They weren't allowed to waste food. And then we had chefs that volunteered to help us, and we had a big pizza oven, and the kids would put it all together, cook it, and eat it. And before classes, parents would say, look, my kid's not rude. I just want to apologize ahead of time. They just don't like vegetables. And then they'd come afterwards and they would say, how did you get my kid to eat vegetables? It's like, one, they're grown in clean soil and they taste good for that reason. Two, they're not overcooked, and three, it was fun. It was fun for them to make their pizza. So it's just, we have to re-educate, we have to work with our kids, our parents. I have all sorts of ideas about how we can change things for pediatric cancer patients, working with their families, but it's so hard to get the hospitals behind it.
That's right. Hopefully, things are changing. I mean, it's MDs. I mean, I never thought I would be in a position in my life where MDs were reaching out to me to ask for advice. And it happens regularly, and it's pretty awesome. Especially, I even would have, when I was doing one-on-one, health coaching, I would have MDs pay me to tell them how to eat healthy, which is pretty funny. But so things are changing. I mean, it's just one day at a time, one person at a time, like trying to get through. And you and I think, have both the same, dreams and visions about changing the industry. But at the end of the day, I want to see that happen, but it makes so much more sense to go straight to the patients, right? To go straight to people and say, hey, listen, your doctor's not going to tell you anything about this, but let me, and then why don't you make a decision? Use that information to make a decision that's best for you.
And it's changing. My integrative medicine doctor was Dave Rakel, who's he founded the program at University of Madison. His father was the editor of the family practice textbook for the medical schools, and still is. He's been doing it forever. He was the first one to put it together.
Wow.
Dave's editing with him. Now Dave, he got funding from the National Institutes for Health several years ago. He put together an integrative medicine textbook, which my computer is under, or I would pull out and show everybody. But it's being used in medical schools. He's in the 4th edition. So, but not all medical schools are using it, right?
Yeah. What does he talk about in there?
Oh, it's literally everything.
Is it on Amazon?
Sorry, it's on Amazon. Yeah, it's like $100.
What's it called?
But it's a textbook.
Yeah.
Here, I'm gonna move my computer.
Yeah, show it.
Okay, here it is.
There it is. Okay. Yeah.
And this is in the medical schools who are willing to take it on. But you can look at it yourself. And it is everything from energy healing to diet to supplements to, whatever. I mean, it's totally integrative. But anyway, yeah, so it is changing a little bit, and there are people talking about it. And I think the more patients talk about it and request it, and then there's the Harvard NEAR study where they're looking at people like I get to be a part of that. I'm super excited. But they're looking at people who are outliers, they were considered outliers, not real, but okay.
Shouldn't have survived. Yeah, like a radical remission type survivor.
Exactly. But there's plenty of us out there. And so they're finally creating a database. And I'm really excited about that because, doctors won't be able to say we don't have any data.
That's great. Well, let's link to it for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's important for patients also because one of the things I teach is advocacy, which is the A in my book. So it's Evolve, Advocate, Transform. And we have to not be afraid to advocate for ourselves, even in the face of doctors who are not respectful, right? Because there are doctors that are not respectful, but it's important for us to understand that's not about us. That's about their issues.
Who wrote the foreword for your book?
Larry Mullen, Jr. Do you know this already? You saw it?
Yeah, I saw it. Tell that story.
Okay. Larry. Okay, so tell that story. Well, Larry talks about when we met in the foreword. Larry is the drummer for the band U2, but also the founder of U2. And we met, I kind of alluded to, I'm a very strong personality. I am not intimidated. And we met down in Daytona, and my husband's cousin is the Davidson family for Harley Davidson, and his cousin at the time was in charge of all the famous people. And this was our vacation, and he said, can you guys just watch over this guy, Larry? He's with this band U2. And I was like, no way, I don't want to do that. This is my vacation. And my husband's like, no, I know that band. They're really good. Yeah, we'll do it. And so we had dinner the first night, and he's talking about, because U2 is known for their environmental work early on, and he's talking about how, this is so great that we put our T-shirts in clear plastic bags now. Well, I might have just gone off on plastic bags, and what are you talking about? And call yourself an environmentalist. And he sort of was like, who's this? And Ron's cousin said, oh, that's my cousin's wife. You're going to be hanging out with her for the next 10 days. It was just like, yikes. And, it was like immediately, because he's so smart and he's so funny and he's got this very dry sense of humor. Most people don't know because he's not out and about like Bono or Edge, but we would just be going and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And my husband would be like, I can't even follow these conversations. And so anyway, we have been friends. It's been 30, we met in, I think, 87, 88, something like that. So we've been friends in our family. Our kids all know each other, and
That's
so
awesome.
Larry's a good friend. And so when I was diagnosed, it was really hard for him, and he started it was funny because he couldn't talk to me after he found out I was diagnosed. Cancer diagnosis is hard for people to process. And instead he was like trying to get information that could help me. So he's actually the one that introduced me to anti-angiogenesis, which he couldn't even say, it's like this thing. And he's the one, he said, you got to do this, you have to do this. And it actually got to a point, for anyone out there who has, a loved one with cancer, he was like calling all the time, you got to do this, because he was feeling desperate. And I was just exhausted. And finally it was like, God, stop calling me, talk to my husband, talk to Ron, whatever. But I can't, I'm just trying to make it through my day right now.
So you had to tell Larry Mullen Jr. to stop calling.
Although,
what a problem to have.
We still talk, of course we talk periodically, but it was like this guy
and you too won't leave me alone.
Yeah, right. He's a lovely, just really a wonderful person. His family's
Well, I'm a huge U2 fan. Love them to death.
Oh, yeah.
They're amazing. My wife and I just saw them a month ago in Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah. He's the guy. He's my favorite.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he is. And he's a very, he's a family guy, He's just low-key family quality, know. And so anyway.
There was a guy in the crowd. It's funny. We had a laugh. There was a guy in the crowd at the show who was wearing a T-shirt that he had made up or something, but it said the Larry Mullen Jr. Band.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, because he's so quiet. He's not quiet in real life, but he's quiet publicly, so people never really knew. But blood, sweat, and tears into putting that band together, and
they're actually the longest running band with original members in the world. There's no band that's been together as long as them with all the same original members.
And they're all old, and they should think about, slowing down.
Yeah, but what would you do? You've done that your whole life. You just got to do it till you die, pretty much.
I know.
And it's so much fun. Why quit?
Yeah, it's good. It's fun to watch, But I do worry about him because it's a lot of stress, doing what he does. And, I know
on the road all the time, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, but so I called him up and said, I'm writing this book, and would you give me like a little quote for the book jacket? And he said, no. And he said, send me what you have, like the other people who wrote quotes. And I wasn't I didn't know I should go out to far and wide. I just asked the doctors around me and people who knew me a little bit. And he goes, well, these people clearly don't really know you. He said, can I just write the foreword? And it was or that would be phenomenal, So yeah.
Let me sleep on it.
Yeah, right. Nah.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. So so that's the story of Larry Mullen.
Well, Kathy, this has been so fun. I'm just so excited for you. So glad that you're reaching more people and helping spread the message of the power of nutrition and radical life change to help your body heal. Where can people find you? So on my website, which we said before. Yeah. Hold up the book so they can see your book, and then. So there are a couple comments on Amazon where people said, "Well, it's not a diet book." It is not a diet book. It is not a recipe book. It's my story, and that's it. And the purpose is to let people know that, you can do something for yourself. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And so it's the ups and downs, and I wrote it for patients, and it's always really so exciting for me to hear back from people who've read it who are patients, and they say, "Oh my gosh, I read, that was me. I'm so glad to know I wasn't the only one." Because we feel like we're the only one. But I also wrote it for loved ones so that they would understand.
if you're getting chemo, you're cognitively impaired. So the words you say may not make sense, or you're so exhausted that you might cancel at the very last minute. That's okay. Nobody should give you a hard time about that.
Yeah.
And then for doctors to be like, okay, wait, really? Because they don't know. When you go into their office and they say, what's your pain? 0 to 10, whatever. And they have like this list of questions they read. They're not saying, so how are you really? Like, what's going on at home? And what's this and what's that? So I wanted doctors to see, hey, we have to do better. We have to do much better for these patients. We can't just put them on the protocol train and send them off. We have to understand that, doing all these different modalities actually will have a better result. And so I just wanted to because a lot of the books out there, they treat cancer like it's funny, or it's romantic, whatever, or it's devastating and the person passes. Like, I just wanted, look, I didn't pass. I want you to see what I did. I overcame all the stuff that you gave to me, and I probably didn't even have to go through all that, which is why I'm so excited that you're doing what you do. Because it's clear, it's crystal clear that we are not anomalies,
Yeah. So let me ask you one final question, and that is, do you think that, knowing what you know now, and
yes,
getting the same diagnosis, do you think you would have done treatment, or do you think you would have maybe given yourself time to heal before you rushed into anything?
That is a great question. So, and it's been asked of me before, and I never have a good answer. So, inflammatory breast cancer is one that spreads like wildfire, gets into your dermal lymphatics, and it's gone. And you're, but I also know it doesn't happen overnight. So, I would have to, I think knowing what I know now, I would take time to process and understand where I was at, employ a bunch of natural stuff. But that's not to say I wouldn't go get chemotherapy or something, because I don't know. I think when you're diagnosed, something happens, I think you're unique if you can keep it together, and really stay centered, and I would like to think I've done a lot of work that I would be that person, but I just don't know, I don't know.
You don't know until you're in that situation. I appreciate that answer a lot. I understand completely.
Yeah, and anxiety is something that I never really, I had anxiety, I later could identify as anxiety, but I didn't know that's what it was when we were camping out in the Boundary Waters, and a bear came into our camp and like tore everything apart. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I had this like anxiety attack, but I didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah.
And until I was diagnosed with cancer. And
you had the same response?
Yeah, woke up in the middle of the night, and I was already asleep, woke up, and it was just like, and I wrote about it in my book. It was just, what is going on? Am I dying right now? Like, I don't know. And so I feel like that's what we have to turn around, is like, in fact, I saw in one of your videos, you said, cancer is a symptom. And that is exactly what it is. It's a symptom. And so we don't have to panic. We don't have to say that person's going to die. None of that. We just have to get centered and start to, and connect and try to understand what the best thing for each of us is. And I feel like the more our doctors are educated, because they're just not educated now, and for anyone who thinks, their doctor doesn't want to help them, it's just that they can't. Hi.
Here's my little one, Mackenzie. Now, my daughters ride horses too, by the way.
Your what?
My daughters both have horses. They love to ride.
Whoa!
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Here's Mackenzie.
My hands felt like
Making a surprise cameo here.
Mackenzie?
Hi.
What's your horse's name?
Smooch.
Mooch?
Smooch.
Smooch. Oh, is he smoochy or are you smoochy?
They're both pretty smoochy.
Yeah. My hands
Smooch is kind of grumpy though,
yeah,
isn't she?
my hands smell like buttermilk.
They do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you get your dad on the horse yet? Has your dad
My
ridden?
dad, I rode a little bit as a kid for a couple of years, but then I was playing soccer and doing too much other stuff to, keep it up. But
Yeah.
my wife loves it, and then, but now my kids are really the only ones that ride.
Yeah.
So, just
I
trying
know.
to keep up with them.
I know, and I don't ride anymore because they took a nerve out of because the tumor was wrapped around the nerve, and so I lose my balance.
Oh.
So I would ride, and he would like look at me like, "What is going on?" Because I always had a really good seat.
You're like sideways in the saddle.
Yeah, he would literally look back like,
What are you
and then I
doing?
thought, if I fall off, this is going to be bad because I'm older now, and you get hurt. It hurts more.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Your bones are less flexible and springy. All right.
Yeah. Anyway, so
It's been fun. Thank you, Kathy, again. So we got I'll link to your website, your book, and everybody check out the show notes for those things. And go get Kathy's book. Follow her online, and she's doing great stuff for sure. And she's friends with Larry Mullen Jr., so she must be cool.
did you hear that story?
Yeah. And please like and share this video. There are people in your life that need to see it. They need to hear it. They need to know that cancer does not have to be a death sentence. And there's so
Right.
much you can do to take control of your situation and empower your body to heal, to support your body in the process. And if all you're doing is trusting your doctors to save you, you are not doing enough. I'll just end it with that.
Absolutely not. Yep. You are your own best advocate.
That's right. That's right. Doctors can be helpful, but they've got to be a part of your team, and you got to be the driver of the team. You got to be the captain of the team. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. See you, Kathy.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Chris.